Hi, welcome to our YouTube channel. In this video, I would talk about Python variables. In the last video, we saw how to assign data types to our variables, and we also saw how Python is case sensitive. So, let's dig in further with Python variables. So, I've created a new file and I would show you something about the Python variables. First of all, we would talk about some illegal Python names, like the name of the variables that you cannot use. And one of them is that you cannot start a variable name with a numeric value. For example, if I use a variable name fruit and I start it with 2 and I pass it in a string argument apple, then you can see, sorry, if I start with a numeric value, then you can see that Python is giving me an error here. So what does it mean? That I cannot start my variable name with a numeric value. I would write it here for you. No start with a numeric value. So our second case is that I cannot use spaces between the variable names. For example, if apple is my favorite fruit and I want to write it in Python, I cannot write it like this. Favorite fruit is equal to apple. Again, it is underlining the word because I cannot use the spaces in the variable names. So what we learned that no spaces in a variable name. Mhm. And the third case is that even if I don't use the spaces, I cannot either use a hyphen. And what is hyphen? For example, favorite fruit is equal to apple. So it's again throwing me an error. So I would write it here for you. No hyphen in Python variables. So what you can do instead of hyphen, you can use an underscore. So if I write again favorite underscore fruit is equal to apple, it's working fine for me. Huh? So these are the three things that you cannot do when you are assigning a name to a variable. So now we have seen how what we cannot do for the variable name. So we just comment it out and write our codes further. So I would hashtag all these statements and it would not work. Now I want to show you how you can assign the same values to the multiple variables. For example, if I have a variable x and I have a variable y and I have a variable z and I want to assign the same value to the three variables, what would I do? I would just write anything in between and for example same values. And what would happen if I print it? Print x, print y, and print z. And now I would run it and show you what would happen. Variable m, and you would see that all these three variables are getting the same value. And now let's dig in further with a different way of assigning values to the variable. For example, I have a list of fruits. This is another way of assigning a variable to Python, and I declare a list and I use scare brackets for that. And it is apples and oranges and let's say grapes. So now As you can see that we have three entries in our list of fruits, and I want to assign different entry to a different variable. How would I do? Now I would define three variables A, B, and C, and I would pass it in the list of fruits, and now I would print out these variables and see what happens. Print B, print C, and now if I run it, what would happen? You can see that the first entry of the list goes to A, and the second goes to B, and the third one goes to C. So this is one way of declaring variables and assigning it to a specific variable. So now we would see how we would use multiple variables and join them using print statement. For example, if I have multiple strings, how would you use and combine it with a single print statement? So let's get started. For example, if I have a value x and it says a string I and a value y that says I love, and there is another value z, and say I love coding. So how would you join them using a single print statement? Well, one way of doing that is you use the print statement, print command that's a built-in Python function, and then you would concatenate the three strings using a plus sign. And what it would do, it would just do x plus y plus z. And if I run this code, then what would happen? It would just concatenate the three strings using print statements, and you can see that there was no spaces. So I if want to give spaces, then I would just put it here. I love coding, and let's rerun and check it out. So this is fine. Another way of doing that is you can use the comma statements for that, and I would show you how. And you can do print x comma y comma z, and then we can check it out what happens. And if I run it, you can see that there was double spaces in here because using this concatenation Python assigns the spacing to the strings, and if I remove those spacing from here and rerun the statement, what would happen? Well, when I was using the plus statements, it was just concatenating the strings, but when I use the comma for concatenation of string, it by default created spaces for that. So this one is recommended recommended usage for concatenation of strings. So this would be the end of this video, and in this video we discussed about some method of concatenating strings. So I would say goodbye and happy learning.